very special guests, Sophie Richardson, China Director for Human Rights Watch, and filmmaker Nanfu Wang.
I started with an idea of making a film about sex workers' life because I grew up in rural areas in China, and I've seen a lot of women who didn't have access to education and ended up becoming sex workers. So when I read the story about Ye Haiyan, she volunteered to the brothels and offered free sex. I thought, what kind of a woman she was? Must be crazy and brave too. So that's when I decided to go back to China and try to meet her, and hoping that she would introduce me to some sex workers. And when I got to China, the whole story changed, as you saw in the film.
And can you speak a little bit about the work that Human Rights Watch is doing on some of the themes and the issues in this film that relates?
Sure. Well, I love this film for a lot of different reasons, but one is that we actually did research on abuses of sex workers 3 or 4 years ago and did a report that, among other people, features Ye Haiyan and her work and calls for that same position, about decriminalization, largely because as long as sex work is criminalized, it really puts sex workers themselves at enormous risk, both of harassment from the police, but also of all sorts of public health problems. But we find ourselves spoilt for choice of topics these days, whether it's about abuses of ethnic minorities, whether it's about the gross politicization of the legal system, whether it's about the party's own internal disciplinary system, which is completely outside the normal legal system, in which we see, precisely some of the people who are responsible for perpetuating this system suffering under it. I fear we're not going to go out of business anytime soon.
Nanfu, can you tell us what was some of the most surprising things that happened to you during the making of the film?
First of all, I was not political. I was not involved in any activism at all, like she said. I got into this by accident. And 2 weeks after I started filming, my family, who lived 500 or 600 kilometers away from where the production location was, they got the first phone call from national security agents. And they asked, do you know Nanfu is back in China? Do you know what she was doing? And my family had no idea what I was doing because I didn't tell them. And I didn't return home since I got back to China. So they were shocked. They were like, what did you do in the US? And 3 or 4 weeks later, my friends who were in Shanghai, whom I went to college with, were taken into interrogation. And again, Shanghai is far away from where I was, where Ye Haiyan was, where my family was. And that's when I realized the scale of the censorship and how we were tracked down everywhere.
And Sophie, seeing this film and the amazing, extraordinary difficulties and the secret police and what's at stake here? I mean, internally and also externally with China.
Yeah, I think the stakes are not low. We're talking about the country with the world's largest population. It's the second largest economy. It's a permanent member of the United Nations Security Council. And the fact that ordinary people who are simply trying to get justice for outrages like children being raped themselves wind up being prosecuted, magnify that hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times across the country, and then project it into China's international posture. And I think unless and until we can change that, there's a lot there to be really concerned about.
So right here in the...
So is it safe for you to go back to China if you ever want to go back?
There are 2 worst-case scenarios. One is I can go back, but I will never be able to come out. Another worst-case scenario is I cannot go back. So I think I'm not going to try anytime soon to go back because I still have a lot to do, and I don't want to be confined. And it makes me sad because my whole family is in China, and also China is the country that I was born and grew up. And I still want to make films in China. There are so many stories to tell. But at the same time, I knew there are more and more people in China who see the potential that documentary can bring change to the situation. And there are so many people are doing that, and they are continuing making films and showing the world what's happening there. And I'm happy for that.
Thank you for your courage.
Thank you.
That is a wonderful note to end on, and I want to thank you both very much for this wonderful discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for seeing the film.